Welcome, everyone, to Hello, Ernest at the Kitchen Table, connecting writers and readers. I am Jan Pratt, the author of several children's picture books and also the author of a series of yoga lesson plans for kids.
And I am Gaga Gabarty. I'm a co-author with Judy Lee Butler. Together, we write the Phoebe Cornell Mystery Series. Join us for every episode as we connect readers to welcome everyone and hello to John DiGirolamo, who is at our kitchen table today. John, want to welcome you to the kitchen table for whatever it is.
Well, thanks for having me, Gene. I really appreciate it.
Well, this is all about getting to know the author person behind the scenes for all of our listeners. We know that everyone is already reading your books, but there's more to it than just what's on the written page. It's all about you as a person. So why don't we get started with kind of that 10,000 foot view that I love? And it's all about, was there a moment in time or something that turned you into a writer, or have you been writing forever? Tell me about that.
Sure. So when I was younger, I kind of was really interested in writing and, tried to write my first novel and short stories. And I thought I would be the next John Grisham. Um, and then, and then realized that was going to be a lot harder than I thought. And I had gone to school to get a degree in accounting. And so essentially decided, I better use that finance degree to actually, pay the mortgage and all that good stuff. So 35 years later, I kind of went into semi-retirement and then re-picked up that passion for writing and that creative outlook. And I wrote my first book about police officers during the defund the police movement, and that kind of sparked the notion to give small town police a voice and what are their stories, and kind of different than what was kind of being portrayed in the media. And so that kind of kicked it off, and it went from there.
Okay, all right. Well, that's interesting that what was going on in the world kind of inspired you to uh, go to the police and take a look at rural police, especially. I thought it was very
Yeah.
well written. I loved that. I have read both of your books, and you have a third one out now.
Yeah, well, I actually have a fourth. So the third one is just a booklet that was kind of an online guide for parents that came out of some of my talks. And the fourth one has just come out this month, and so I'm excited to talk about that one as well.
All right, on to that. Um, in all four of these books, then, do you have kind of a central theme, or you're trying to, kind of a moment in time that you're trying to enlighten people? What's your approach?
Yeah, so there's been kind of a progression. So if I could just kind of tell the story of how that happened. I was talking with a police officer doing interviews, and I would end the interview with kind of easy questions to put in the plot line. What's your favorite music, movie? What'd you do if you won the lottery? And one of those officers just sort of stopped stone cold and said, if I won the lottery, I'd quit my job and hunt down human traffickers. And when he said that, yeah, I'm expecting, go fishing by the lake or play golf or something. And so, and what I realized in that moment was two things. One, that I knew I had my next book. And the second thing was, I don't know anything about human trafficking. And if I don't know anything, then probably the average person doesn't know anything. And so that kind of put me on a trail to get four different perspectives from four different people about this particular subject. And I really felt like trafficking was one of the worst things that some person can do to another. And I wanted to kind of give, again, these other people a voice. And I started talking about this subject, and that led to doing this booklet of what's happening online, because up part of trafficking happens because of online activities. There's a lot of other bad things that happen online, especially to kids and teens, as well as scams against seniors and things like that. And so I was kind of focusing on, well, how do I help parents, navigate this to protect their vulnerable loved ones? And that kind of led me to thinking about, well, who's the ultimate predator? And to me, that's going to be Satan. And so that kind of led me to doing this new book. It's not about the devil, about people fighting modern evil. So that's been the kind of the progression, to me, a logical progression of how I came up with these different subjects.
Okay, all right. And so you're taking all of your experience in research and writing all about it, putting it all together into what I think looks like creative nonfiction. Is that a good guess?
Yeah, I tell people it's creative nonfiction or dramatized nonfiction because they're all based on real stories, real testimonies, case files. But I'm taking that information and I'm creating dialogue, action, thoughts, emotions, etc. And going back with that person who I've interviewed and make sure I've captured their personality or what was going on in that moment. And so I wanted it to read like a fiction novel, in the sense of being fast paced and having all those different characters and things like that. But to me, it's all true stories based upon what's been revealed during case files, interviews, etc.
And what is the end result for the reader then? Is it, we're reading first about police officers and the importance of them in our society, and then we're looking at human trafficking as a result of that. And now you're writing generally about evil in the world, and it looks like one thing is triggering the next thing. And what
Yes.
do the readers get out of it? What are you hoping?
Well, I'm hoping they get a a really good read where they want to hear about
Yes.
different people, fascinating stories, and they want to turn the page and find out what happens next. But they're going to learn something at the end and not even realize it. And that's the goal of, whether it's, hey, who is this person behind the badge? Or I had no idea that this is how predators, get people into human trafficking and why it's so hard to leave. Or, what happens when the insider's view of what's going on in an exorcism. They might learn a lot of stuff, but they're going to learn it through stories rather than reading a report or something like that.
Or a textbook.
Right, right. It's trying to kind of learn through the storyline. So it's a little more subtle, but it ultimately has to be entertaining, right? Because if no one wants to find out what happens to your main character, they're going to put it down and never go back, and that's the kiss of death for any author.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Definitely looking for that. Well, I think it's interesting that you've gone from a career in finance over to creative nonfiction. And to me, the research is there, and that really requires a lot of discipline. But also, you've got to be creative. How do you harness these two things and bring them together for the great reads?
Yeah, so it's a funny way of describing it, but I kind of write like an accountant. And what I mean by that is I keep the plot very structured and figure out every section should have a purpose. What am I trying to reveal, either about the main character or a secondary character or something like that? And so my approach is kind of very structured in the sense of, and in one sense, it's easy because I'm interviewing somebody, so I already know what's going to happen. I don't have to make that part up, right? Because they're going to tell me this is what happened next, or this is this big issue that happened in my life, type of thing. And so, but my job is then to take that plot line that I already know from the interview and then fill in those blanks of, well, who are these peripheral characters? And I may go interview that specific person if I can. If it's somebody like a criminal somebody who I'm not really going to get a hold of, that's where I can kind of put in some creativity to make an interesting character, and then base that person on how I know the plot is developing, or how the person I've interviewed has said, well, this was the kind of person who did X, Y, and Z. And so it's a combination of what I would say very structured, but yet there's these bursts of creativity to fill in the blank, so to speak, and to try to make it interesting for the reader, because in anyone's story, there's always going to be other people involved, and they have to be interesting too, and you have to give them some depth and reveal their motivations. And so I really try to get into the head of the characters, so to speak, and really what are they doing, what's motivating them, good or bad. And so if it's an evil character, I try to channel that, and if it's a good character, I try to do that as well.
So you mentioned character and try to get into their head to write it. What about character development? Do you just kind of fly by the seat of your pants, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, I usually develop a series of questions that I'll do an interview with somebody, and there'll be definitely some things that come up during the interview that I don't expect, an answer, or we'll just go down a different path. And many times it's open-ended, and then I'll just ask, well, what were you thinking at this time, or why did you, decide to do this, even though it was a bad idea, so to speak. And really just try to kind of probe into those things to try to build up this person. Now, what's nice about my writing is I can go back to that person I've interviewed and said, okay, I got, all this information. Now let me, put together a plot. Let's go back and talk about that specific incident. So it's helpful for me because I can go back to a real person and get clarification, because ultimately I want to do justice to that person. I want to capture their personality. It may not be what I would have done or what I think was a great idea or whatever, but that's their story. It's not my story, so to speak. So you can go back and really kind of develop that person. It's the peripheral characters where I have a little more artistic license, because if they tell me that here's this person and this is what they were doing, and maybe it's a criminal or a bad guy, and then I can go and kind of create that person through other research of, well, what do these people do, and a little bit of the inside the mind of that person. And that's kind of the fun part, because that's the little bit of the creativity, but I'm not having to figure out everything all on my own. And so in one sense, to me, it's a good balance, because I think I would have a hard time writing a true fiction novel. I think that would be a lot more difficult for me.
Okay, yeah. Thinking about the books of yours that I've read, and the character development is fantastic. How do you stay motivated? I mean, you write some and then you refer to, I might have to go back and double check or re-interview. How do you stay motivated for that?
I'm a pretty disciplined person, and I have a lot of, before I start a book, I have a lot of different ideas, and I try to pick either the person or the topic that I'm really excited about. It, if you're not waking up looking forward to doing writing, you're probably, not writing about the the right topic or something. And so, mostly I'm kind of self-motivated, but I also have an obligation. If I'm going to go interview somebody and expect hours and hours of their time, go back with different revisions of drafts, I can't just drop the ball. So I have that obligation to them. So that helps me, I think, stay motivated, because if I tell them, hey, I'm going to get you a section of your book in 2 weeks, well, I don't want to, make it 2 months.
Right, yeah. So you do have to have that discipline, and I can see where a finance background would definitely give you a lot of practice on this whole subject of discipline. I You refer to, if you get up in the morning, you're not excited about writing. What are your writing habits? You just are you typing everything? Are you longhanding? Are you writing on the back of napkins? What are your habits?
Yeah, so I record all the interviews of the people I talk to, and then I have that dictate into Microsoft Word, and I get their entire testimony. Then I go through that, pick out either phrases I really like that I'm going to use for sure, and it makes it easier to keep things accurate with their story because I don't have to remember as much. So I take that, and that's kind of the basis for the plot line. But I try, when I'm in the writing mode and not in book promotion mode, which is another full-time job. Um,
Yes.
I do try to write on a daily basis, and I will also dictate. So I'll have my little plot line on something, and I'll be looking at it, and then I will just dictate in this person said this or this action. So that way, it gets in there fast, where I can put thousands and thousands of words in very, very rough form dictated into Microsoft Word in a matter of hours. And then it's editing and sentence structure, and do I have it in the right order, and am I too wordy here, or is this relevant or not relevant, or where do I need to increase or decrease the detail? So that's kind of my mechanical approach.
Okay, all right, good, thank you. And wondering about editing. So you're adding, subtracting as you go, and now we've got something ready to be published, maybe. What about editing?
Yeah, so to me, it's more than just grammar. So you've got to start from a high level of, are you revealing all the things that you want to reveal in the order that you want to reveal it? And so, do you have a good and interesting story to begin with? So I have to start with that, and then go into, I break it out by sections, and then be able to say, okay, what am I doing in this section? What is the purpose? What is it revealing? And then I get to more of the grammar and sentence structure of, okay, is my paragraph too long? Or have I said this in a way that is really what I would call crisp writing? I don't really do a lot of flowery descriptions, things like that. I try to focus on moving the story along very, very quickly. Now, some people might say, well, maybe you don't give enough description or things like that. But if I say something like they met at a coffee shop, we all know what that looks like. I don't have to go in and say, unless it's relevant, I don't have to say, well, they sat at this table and they smelled the coffee and they saw books on the shelf and people in line. I mean, if that's relevant, sure. But if it's not, they met at a coffee shop. And so I try to do that. But what's fascinating about the editing process is it's something it seems like you could do forever. So, I had a book, my last book, where I thought it was pretty much done. And between the time I kind of worked with the publisher and the time that I had a hard copy printout in my hand, I had gone back and literally made 1,000 changes. And yet those 1,000 changes probably resulted in 5 more sentences. It was all little grammar or little bit of, I could say this better. And say it a little, in 10 words of a sentence instead of 20 words of a sentence. And I use this program called Pro Writing Aid, which is an online program. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it will look at your sentences, and it will say, it'll give you the basics, the grammar, kind of like Microsoft Word will do, but it also will come back and say, you've repeated the same word 3 times in this paragraph. Do you really want to say that? you don't want to say it's a beautiful day and I saw a beautiful house in a beautiful, meadow or something like that. You don't want to repeat those things. So some of those programs can kind of help you look at things. You can't do everything they say, because what I've noticed that is they kind of take away your style a little bit. So they might come up with 100 suggestions. Hey, look at this sentence, and then it'll say, it'll propose to you. You could say that same sentence in 3 different ways, and you could pick one of those, or you could pick one and then modify it some more. And so that's part of it's just a methodical, it's kind of a grind to do that final end, I find, but I'm trying to make the experience for the reader to be optimal and not get bogged down in something too wordy or something that's kind of an awkward way to say it.
Well, your books are turning out great. So whatever it is you're using, it definitely works. What advice do you have for the aspiring writers out there who are listening today?
Yeah, you've got to do it because you really love what you're doing, because most of us aren't going to make a lot of money doing this.
True.
And so uh, and especially when you're older, you're probably not counting on a 40-year career in writing, and you're not going to do Stephen King and do 50 books or whatever he has. So you've got to really like it. And the other piece is to the whole marketing promotion is a completely different skill set. And if you go and publish by yourself or a small publisher, you're still expected to do a lot of marketing on your own. Most of us aren't going to be, with some major marketing muscle and dollars behind it. So it is a different skill set. There's resources out there that you can get to do that. What I've tried to do is to get on podcasts and do presentations of different groups about the subject matter. And so even if you're just, if you say you're just doing a fiction writing that maybe doesn't have a topic like human trafficking, perhaps, you could still come up with ways to, how do you get in front of the Rotary group or civic organizations or churches or, schools or whatever, to just try to get the word out. And it helps polish your message. And there's lots of podcasts on literally every different subject out there, so you can find something that fits in with
Yeah.
if you've written a story about how somebody perseveres through the face of adversity, well, what's that adversity? And I bet you there's a podcast about that, and that will help you, really crisp up your message, but it also can help market the book. And it's really interesting to talk to other people about it. And it helps keep you stay motivated to continue on when you're not just sort of locked in your office by yourself, trying to do an ad on Amazon or something.
Yeah, I definitely can understand that. Thank you. That's great. Well, I tell you what, we have a couple minutes left. I wondered if you'd be interested in reading a piece from any one of your books. Uh, do you have time for that today?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So the book that just got released is called "It's Not About the Devil," where people are fighting modern evil. And so one of the stories is the insider's view to what goes on in an exorcism. We see a lot of stuff in Hollywood, and some of it's accurate, and a lot of it, of course, is sensationalized. And I didn't really know much about it, and so I wanted to. I found this kind of story really interesting, and I interviewed people who are in the room during an exorcism. I've interviewed people who were possessed by the devil, who were a former witch, who were another person who was consecrated to Satan as a child. I mean, these are all really scary things.
Yeah.
And yeah, some of the things that they told me was actually pretty frightening. And it helped kind of sanity check to try to make it be as authentic as possible. Because if I talk to people about it, I want to say this is accurate. This is what what really happens. It's based on case files. But interviewing some of these other people helped develop the peripheral characters. And the main character is somebody who literally wrote the training manual on how to do an exorcism. And people don't realize there's actually a training manual out there. It's not easy to get, but this is the guy who wrote it. And so, so the story, which I'll read, starts out with kind of the main character. So I'll just go ahead. Are demons real? Yes, of course, he answered, surprised by the question, and then added, for example, the serpent in the Garden of Eden. I know about that, Kennedy Flowers cut him off. I'm asking about the rest of them. Father Jeremy Whitburn paused a moment before answering. The young priest didn't recognize the voice from the other side of the old wooden confessional booth, but he could distinguish some of the man's features through the fabric screen. Let's back up a minute. What's going on? You're my last resort. I can't get rid of these headaches, Ken explained and whispered close to the confessional screen. I think I have a demon inside. Why do you say that? The young priest inquired. I get this intense pain for a few minutes, but it lingers and it's difficult to concentrate, especially at work. Migraines? He asked. No, I don't think it's that, Ken said with conviction. Do you need to see a doctor? Could it be stress? The priest asked. I'm always stressed, and I always have been, Ken scoffed with impatience, not looking directly at the priest. That's not it. Maybe it's remorse. Do you have something to confess? Isn't that why you're here? Father Whitburn redirected the conversation. Yes, maybe if I confess, it'll go away, Ken reasoned. Cleared his throat, moved his shirt collar around, even though it wasn't tight around his neck. Well, let's start with that, Father Whitburn suggested. Father, it's so noisy in here, and I need your help, Ken begged and started to cough. Go on. I should tell you, Ken stammered, coughed again, and had a difficult time speaking. And then it goes on to continue their conversation.
Very good, very good. Wow, what a great subject. Not a lot of coverage out there from my perspective, so I look forward to picking up the next copy. Well, I think that concludes our conversation for today. I want to thank you for being with us today. And also, we have a little writing group in Central Colorado, the Central Colorado Writers, and you are really a supporter to that group and these aspiring writers. I'd like to publicly thank you for that support, John. It really means a lot. And for our listeners today, we thank you for joining us. I hope that you've heard enough that you are interested in all of the books that John has written. And for now, goodbye for now. And that is it from the kitchen table. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this informal conversation with today's author.
Join us next time as we connect writers and readers around the kitchen table.